What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? For more infotainment, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates. Thanks for watching. The youngest mother to give birth became pregnant at 4 years old. She's still alive and resides in Lima, Peru apparently. Lina Medina had a rare condition whereby her body went through puberty very early, making it possible for her to conceive a child. Her son was born via cesarean section when she was 5 years and 7 months old, and was raised as her younger brother. The father was never fully confirmed, though suspicion fell on male family members. The girl herself obviously had no clear recollection. A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements and water intake without protein, carbohydrate, or fat intake, no food at all. Dropped from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, the patient was 96 kilograms, stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. If anybody is curious about the article, the PubMed ID is PMC2495396. Edit, fixed autocorrect. The Life of Frane Selak, the luckiest unlucky man in the world. January 1962. Frane is riding on a train through a freezing canyon when it fell into an icy river. All 17 other passengers died while he escapes with a broken arm and hypothermia. 1963. On his first plane trip he was *ed out of the plane's door and landed in a haystack, unscathed. 19 other people were killed in the crash. 1966. He was riding in a bus when it skidded off the road into yet another icy river. 4 passengers drowned while he only received some minor cuts and bruises. 1970. His car's engine burst into flames while he was driving, but he managed to escape before it exploded. 1973. In yet another driving incident, his car's engine was doused with hot oil from a broken fuel pump. This caused flames to shoot through the air vents, singing off all of his hair. He was otherwise unharmed. 1995. He was hit by a bus but only sustained minor injuries. 1996. To escape a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on a mountain curve, he swerved into a guardrail that broke on impact. To save himself, he jumped out of his car's open door and grabbed onto a tree branch as he watched his car plummet off the cliff. Suffice to say, the guy had a complicated relationship with the Grim Reaper. Edit, got his name wrong. Edit 2, got the first edit wrong, turns out I was right the first time. More people died making the V2 rockets during WW2 than were killed by them. Another fun fact about V2 rockets. Germany was facing a large issue with rocket fuel shortages during the project because people kept drinking it. The fuel was made from 70% ethyl alcohol and 30% water, distilled from potatoes. It was the most economically viable fuel at the time, since they were already very low on other fuels. To stop workers from drinking it, they denatured the alcohol, essentially poisoning it, but people kept drinking it anyways and getting extremely ill. This simply caused people to start leaving the V2 program, suggesting that they were only in it for the free alcohol. This also means that any alcohol over 70% ABV is stronger than actual WW2 rocket fuel. Switzerland has accidentally invaded Liechtenstein thrice in the last 50 years. On the first time in 1976, Swiss military got lost and ended up in Liechtenstein, so the Liechtensteiners offered them drinks like proper hosts. On the second time in 1992, Swiss military forgot that a certain observation post was actually not in Swiss territory but in Liechtenstein territory, so they just said sorry and forgot about it. Then again in 2007, the Swiss army got lost and entered Liechtenstein, but eventually realized they weren't in Switzerland anymore, Toto, so they turned back. Liechtenstein didn't even know this happened till the Swiss apologized, again, to which they basically said, "No problem, bro." Takeaways: the Swiss army are bad with directions. The Liechtenstein army people are chill brothers. Sharks evolved before trees did. Trees evolved before the bugs responsible for rotting, i.e. bacteria which could eat lignin and cellulose, did. Thus when they died, they just fell over in place and lay there instead of rotting. Over time the weight of the upper layers of tree corpses compacted the lower levels, which eventually became the coal we dig up and use today. The coolest thing about this is that since there were so many trees just blanketing the continents of the earth, and that they were basically sitting on top of coal, that whenever something, say, a lightning strike, hit a dead pile of wood, it could spark a forest fire that would rage across large swaths of whole continents, and they would last for years. Think about how insane that would look from space, or the top of a mountain. Just nothing but fire for as far as you can see in all directions. There was this French guy named Terror in the late 1700s that could eat anything, in any amount. He was able to eat a quarter of a cow on one day and ate dinner for 15 for one meal when he was being tested. He was even able to swallow an entire eel, with bones included, without hesitating. When he went to the military service, they used him as message transport, but after being captured he went back and tried to find a cure. In the hospital where he was staying, he was suspected of eating a baby, so they kicked him out. He was average weight, and when he died a few years later they could see inside his stomach just by opening his mouth. Here's a video which explains it on better detail. https://youtube.b/nyhdj2sbrc. If you're launching from Earth, the most difficult place to reach in the solar system is the Sun. The reason for this is that to fly directly into the Sun you need to first launch from Earth, and then remove all of your orbital velocity around the Sun. Anything less will just put you into a different orbit around the Sun rather than directly into it. The amount of power required for that to do it directly is basically impossible currently. As an alternative you could, for relatively little power, fly all the way out to Pluto distance, slow down much less, and then fall back into the Sun. The trade-off being the travel time is now about 90 years. There are other in-between paths that could get you there for different balances of energy and time, but all of them are tougher than getting basically anywhere else in the solar system with an equivalent balance. There's a mission currently traveling to study the Sun, the Parker Solar Probe. It won't be flying directly in, but plans to make the closest passes than any probe ever has. It's going to make 7 passes by Venus to shed speed so it can get closer and closer to the Sun. The full flight time is planned as just less than 7 years. As of this post they are 1 week shy of a year in. Fun little anecdote about the Bible translations into obscure languages. A missionary from our church works for a mission that translates the Bible into languages heretofore untranslated and adapts the books and chapters into an audiobook app. He was in a taxi in Kenya and asked the driver what his language was. The driver told him in English that he spoke Swahili. The missionary pressed him and asked if he spoke a local tribal language. The driver said he did and referenced an obscure language he was sure the missionary wouldn't know. The missionary pulled up that language on the app and started playing the audiobook from some passage in the Bible, whereupon the astonished driver proclaimed, "That's my home tribe's language, and that's my cousin's voice." Just a funny little story that your comment reminded me of. Not quite. It was made from marble that a previous sculptor, Duccio, had started carving for a statue of David for a city hall. He abandoned the commission for some reason, but he didn't own the block, so he left that. Another sculptor had a whack at it some time later and probably screwed it up. He was kicked off the project but also didn't own the block, which sat around for a few decades, getting rained on. Michelangelo saw the block, it was known as the Duccio block, and decided he had to have it. The work the second sculptor did is probably why the David has such an odd stance. As for the marble itself, it's Carrara marble, which is a really top-notch sculptural marble for Italian Renaissance sculptors. But it was quarried about 50 years before Michelangelo got it, and I don't know how it would stand up to weather, so there may have been some degradation. It's a damn fine piece of marble though.